I won't lie, it's been a bit. Admittedly, we'd gotten towards the end of the ropes in terms of the map progression and what was all around with the backstory, secret links tying everything together and all between each of the maps. We covered most of the larger plot points, and unless we went into some wild conspiracies to connect the dots, most of the maps up on deck that we hadn't covered didn't have any visible place in the larger puzzle that is Black Ops 4. But the recent refresh of maps for the Black Ops Pass in the DLC season may have changed that, or at least provided a little more clarity, and the biggest of surprises can be found on the map Lockup. So today, we're going to dive deep into the mysteries of this map and what it holds, why it's so important, and where this leads in presenting new questions and the progression of the storyline as we know it. That said, don't do this often, but if you could do me a favor and hit that like button down below if you enjoyed the series. Let's see how many we can get here on this, and let me know if you guys want to see this continue. As well, if you're new, why not subscribe as we explore the mysteries of Black Ops 4. Before we jump into Lockup, let's give a little bit of a refresher because it's been nearly 2 months since our last encounter with the Secret History series. Our last introduction was that of the Icebreaker Secret History, to which we saw that it was the location of the lost nuclear weapon that we first unearthed information about from the map Contraband. While nearly coming full circle, we learned a few things throughout our tours of Contraband, Hacienda, Frequency, Arsenal, Militia, and Icebreaker. We knew of 2 groups seemingly at war with one another, one headed by a crime boss and a drug syndicate smuggler, another by a mysterious cabal with a leader who was known only as Horse and also was known as the Man with the Eye Patch, which is none other than Raul Menendez. We know that the crime boss's organization has had many attacks on it and even began to crumble at some certain points. We know of the secondary and tertiary organizations like the Alaskan militant group, the Patriots of the North, who were once funded by the crime boss, but later then turned on him and were funded by the Russians for unknown reasons. We know of Deisler Robotics, who had a hand in seemingly everywhere, from tech stemming all the way back to the score streaks in Black Ops 1, to what seemingly is the mechanics for helicopters to maneuver throughout the collapse and blackout, as well, also with a mysterious project involving the MPD from Zombies. All this and more makes up the backstory that we currently have for Black Ops 4, and of course, I'm more interested now than ever to find out where this goes, and the introduction of Lockup also provides some new questions that are just as interesting. So if you'd like to catch up on all those videos, you can find them here on the channel, but as for Lockup, well, it's a police station compound complete with a station, reception area, mess halls, mechanic garages, a helipad, investigation room, interrogation centers, and more, and it takes place in the heart of a fictional downtown Los Angeles, California. Upon entering the map, you'll see that it almost looks war-torn, and, well, that's because it is. Not as if the city of Los Angeles was a center of an attack similar to something we'd see maybe in Black Ops 2 when Menendez took the keys to all the world's tech, but instead, this one location is targeted for a specific reason. But we'll get to that in a second. The map itself is a rather standalone map. There's a lot of things that would be absolutely great for small details, but almost to no avail that connect the dots of this map with the overarching Black Ops 4 storyline. Even so much as the name on plaques mean nothing, and if you encounter one in particular, I'd honestly venture to say that it's nothing to do with the overarching story. Even in the most interesting places that Treyarch seem to love to put clues in the likes of things like papers or forms scattered around the map, it's all lorem ipsum Latin placeholder text or blurred enough that you can't make anything out. Almost the entirety of the map is meant to look normal, and it does. That is, until you get to the investigation room. At this point, we can look into the room that is the most destroyed of the compound. While there are small fires everywhere throughout the compound and throughout the hallways, the investigation room almost is entirely ablaze. Why? Because it was targeted. If you look around the office space, you'll notice multiple monitors knocked over and slightly on edge. If you take a little bit of a further look to examine the monitors and what they display, you'll notice that on some of them, someone was looking for some things, and in a few cases, they even found it and started transferring the files and those contents to a USB drive to steal the sensitive information. And honestly, it's quite a lot of information at that, just over 750 gigabytes worth of data. But what exactly was stolen? It's a police station, so there's obviously a ton of sensitive information, case files, right? Surely plenty of bad guys would want their everyday doings kept on the down low. Well, it turns out that we may already be more connected to this story than may first meet the eye. If you go over to the office overlooking the memorial courtyard and turn around, there's a bulletin board connecting many, many dots. Not unlike the same board that we saw in the office of the crime boss on Hacienda. However, where this differs from anything that we've seen before is that this introduces even more evidence and seemingly progresses the timeline of events. Some of the headlines that you'll end up seeing are things like, local church found vandalized and robbed of its gold this morning, pertaining to Seaside, explosions in Iceland with something found on the scene, which is pertaining to payload, the Los Angeles police detectives going to the FBI after several incidents around the globe confirmed to be linked together, something that we don't know exactly where that's from, maybe just perhaps setting up the backstory further of Lockup. Then we end up seeing a headline of Japan, disaster heist goes awry, 3 dead and 12 injured, which pertains to Gridlock. Then we see new militia forming in Alaska, which is the MAP militia, and more specifically, the Patriots of the North militia. Following that is another headline that at the moment doesn't have any significance to the storyline that we know currently, but it says that large fire broke in LA harbor on an anchored Russian freighter. Still no comments were heard from Russian officials at this point. Then we end up seeing the long-lost US submarine found in the Arctic Circle, that pertaining to Icebreaker. After that, we see the Los Angeles police forces bust of local smuggling ring and uncover possible link to international crime syndicate, with ties to Hacienda pertaining to that one. Next, arms and smuggling operation on an island off the coast of Colombia pertaining to contraband. And finally, a high-ranking crime syndicate dismantled by Spanish police, seemingly being the coup de grace of that entire board that may not necessarily wrap everything up, but may be the most recent piece of information that the detectives in this case ended up having for the backstory at large. And it also may hint at what now the status is of that crime boss is that we've followed since the very beginning of this series from Contraband and Hacienda. It might show a little more of the cards in his hand and where he may be at. But here we end up seeing the large entry of existing connections to the storyline, and again, even some that are brand new that may have introduced yet again more open questions that right now we don't have answers to. However, the one thing that can definitively be deduced from this board and the recent raid of the compound is that someone was after that information that the police were gathering against them. Now, it's again easy to assume that the culprit of this was the crime boss and his syndicate, but it also isn't the only possibility. It is quite possible that it could be the reference to Menendez's cabal, or, if unrelated to them, the Russians who have multiple ties now to the story references, including a new couple introduced with this board. Though personally, my money is on the crime boss, and we'll get to why in just a second, but whoever it is, they look to turn the place upside down for that sensitive information, and may have gotten away with the information that could have otherwise proved damning to the one at the middle of all of this. In fact, it may have been so damning that they took on an entire armed police station, which is pretty gutsy. Now, while we don't definitively have written on the walls, "Hey, it was me," there are a few things that can make for an interesting breadcrumb trail that may definitively point towards this being tied to the crime boss that we've examined before. Of all that we've covered in this video so far, take this with the most grain of salt, because it could be something, but it also could be me reaching for an answer that may not be there at the moment. It might seem like it, but it also may not be definitively what we're looking for. If you look around at some of the monitors that have displayed the case files, we have what looks to be the same incident report on a couple of different occasions, where one Jeremy Dickens, who is an officer in the force, submitted their report. The incident report brought in one individual for a robbery by someone using narcotics and had the possession of a blunt object. Now, if my hunch is right, with our crime boss being in the drug world as well as with none other than narcotics, I have a guess that this criminal brought in was probably a plant. They were there to gain eyes on the inside to see if that information that they were looking for was in fact there, and then the cavalry comes in to clean him and the data up. While the plant is still unnamed and the information of that may even just be inconsequential, it may be the explanation for how the station got to what its current state is in Black Ops 4. But that said, while that kind of wraps up the secret backstory of Lockup, it presents even more questions, like what's the state of the crime boss, and is he now on the run? Is he now trying to salvage anything that he has of his organization? Or maybe it's not even him, maybe somebody else is entirely on the run. Also, what's the Russian involvement with this? Because there's more events with them going on, i.e. the Russians with the vessel in the LA harbor, and then also, is there now someone on the inside of the police that may be in play within all of this? We saw multiple inside men from Hacienda detailed, including a couple that linked back to Frequency, the surveillance map that we've seen many times before that we detailed in full up on the channel already. But that said, that is where we're at right now, and it's definitely, again, something that presents many more questions, but also has some interesting connections to previous maps that we've discussed already. So what are your thoughts on all this? What do you guys think? Who do you think is behind this raid? Do you think it is the crime boss and his syndicate? Do you think it is somebody like Menendez and the Cabal that is working against them? Who do you think it is, and where do you think the story may go from here? But also, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 4, backstory like this, as well as MP, Blackout, and Zombies. We got you covered with all that kind of stuff, so if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected with me outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. We can talk some wild story theories if you guys want, but check those out. But all that said and out of the way, thank you guys all so much for watching. My name's been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.